Welcome to the Midweek Mailbag, your Detroit Lions midweek podcast where we answer all of your Detroit Lions questions right here on twitch.tv/Pride of Detroit, youtube.com/@Pride of Detroit, or wherever you are listening to this on whatever podcasting platform that is hopefully working now after some technical difficulties last week. If you are still, I was going to say if you are still receiving technical difficulties, please reach out to me, but I don't know how you would have heard this if you are still going through some technical difficulties.
Well, maybe you're having technical difficulties on one medium, but not another.
That's true.
That could be it, right?
Yeah.
So
Reach
it's
out to me.
always nice to offer that at helping hand. That's very
Absolutely.
kind.
Helping hand, like a helping hand from, I don't know, like a New York hub of
New York?
Hold on. We'll get to that. We'll get to that. My name, by the way, is Jeremy Reisman. I'm the producer over at Pride of Detroit. You can find me at Detroit Online on socials. With me, as always, to help answer your questions is the managing editor of Pride of Detroit, is The Machine, and you can find him at Erik Schlitt on Twitter. It's Erik Schlitt. Erik, how we doing,
Hey, bud. I'm all right. You know what? I think 3 weeks later, I might be getting past my cold. Boy, what a lingering bad cold that I had there. It's that season. It seems to be going around. Ryan's got dealing with something now, and I hope it's not what I had, because that wasn't fun at all. So hopefully, Ryan, get better, bud.
Yeah. And you are also starting to see it kind of like pop up on some injury reports too, where people are like, downgraded to questionable due to illness. So stay healthy out there, folks. Wash your hands.
Good thing I didn't go in the Lions locker room the last couple of weeks.
True.
Because I did my best to stay away.
There you go. Doing your best to help the football team. What's not doing their best to help the football team is maybe officiating. And we're kind of gonna depart from our normal mailbag reputation here, because actually no one asked about officiating. But hours before we went live here, a little bit of news broke, and I think you and I both want to talk about. I need to offer a retraction from the last podcast because what I assumed or guessed was incorrect. But really quick on the trick play that was reversed. Dan Campbell had said after the game that they got the call from New York. I had made the assumption that he was assuming that because Craig Rolstad after the game said, nope, that we did not receive any sort of help from New York. Dan Campbell was asked again about it today, Wednesday, on 97.1 The Ticket, and they were very clear and deliberate in asking him the questions. Where did you hear that? Was that an assumption you made, or did someone directly tell you that? Was it an official who told you that? And he said yes. So an official on the field told Dan Campbell that they got an assist from New York, and then the main ref, who talked to the media after the game, said, no, we did not. So that leaves, I would assume, three possibilities here, Erik. Dan Campbell is a liar.
No.
Craig Rolstad is a liar.
Maybe.
Or the on-field judge was just mistaken in the moment. How do you absorb all of this news?
Well, look, there were 74 seconds between the touchdown and the flag. 74 seconds is a long time. Normally, a conversation between referees doesn't last that long. And if it does, there's usually something going on. Now, it's possible they were looking at the big screen and making some assumptions based on the big screen, that there maybe an eye glanced up to take a look at the play to see if, indeed what they missed live was a foul. But my assumption, based on what we know about Dan Campbell, is that Dan likes to run his trick plays by the referees ahead of the game. And based on Dan's reaction since post-game on Monday when you asked him the question about it, he did not want to talk about it. He was very frustrated.
Yeah.
And he doesn't want to get fined.
Sore spot.
Yes. And he certainly doesn't want to get fined by the refs. But my guess, and this is, again, my opinion, nothing that we know about, just my opinion, is that he ran it by the refs. Craig Rolstad's crew said, yep, that play is fine. And then they ran it, and there was no flag because they believed it was fine. Then
Ring,
I
ring,
believe
ring, ring.
New York intervened incorrectly and against the rules. I
Yep.
believe New York intervened and said, Craig, you've got this play wrong. You need to correct it and drop your flag. And so then Rolstead did. And then Rolstead said to Dan, we got contacted from New York. The problem here is New York is not allowed to intervene on this play. And so, one, I think Craig Rolstead was wrong in not understanding the rules. Two, I believe New York intervened with Craig Rolstead. Three, Craig shouldn't have told Dan that New York got involved because that was a violation
Right.
of
It
the
wasn't
rules.
necessarily Craig.
And
It was just an official. We don't know who.
right, whoever. And then again, I think Craig was probably told, "Hey, we weren't supposed to get involved. Oops on our part." And so then
After
they
the game.
made the statement after the game. Yeah, no. New York wasn't involved. New York wasn't involved. Here's the deal. You Dan has contacted the league and your question to that yesterday was, did you get a response? Or I believe, or like you brought up this topic, right? And so he was asked, did he get a response? And Dan's comment was no. But you had I don't know, do you have the quote handy? I don't have that quote handy, what Dan said exactly here.
From yesterday
But
when I asked him whether they ran it through by a ref beforehand. Yes. He
Yes.
said, I don't even want to talk about it. I don't, and I'm sorry. It's a real sore spot. I told the team, man, I take full responsibility for that. I do. The players did exactly what we told them to do. Goff did exactly what we told him to do. David did, and I will take that. You've got to make clear on where you are, and I did not do that. I told them I take full responsibility for that.
So, okay. So I fully believe that Craig was not clear on the rule. Made the mistake by not calling it. Made the mistake by telling Dan it was okay. And then New York got involved, which they weren't supposed to do.
Right.
Now, they did get the play right. So, in essence, that's what we want. But the NFL violated its own officiating rules by injecting themselves into this conversation if this is what happened. And it sure sounds like it's what happened. And so the question now becomes, why did New York interject? Was it because they wanted to be right on national TV? Or are there deep down dark conspiracy theories against the Lions and the Chiefs? Everyone, probably not. But New York probably got involved. It sure sounds like it. Dan has now said twice that New York, he was told New York intervened and made the decision. And by the letter of the law, they are not allowed to do that. So it sounds like a bunch of mistakes happened, and now they're trying to CYA and try and make sure that pretend like no one's looking. The problem is that we're looking.
Yeah. And the only other like piece of evidence I'd like to approach the bench with is what Craig Rolstead's explanation for why it took so long. So his explanation why it was, this wasn't New York, this was them. And not saying he's right or wrong here, but I think it's just worth considering what he said, which is, quote, "It's my job to see if the quarterback stopped initially. The down judge watches the player in motion, and we had to communicate between him and my umpire and the line judge whether or not he initially stopped at the quarterback's position, and then whether he stopped after he went in motion out of my view towards the left-hand side of the field. There was a little bit of confusion in our discussion whether he had stopped initially or whether he had stopped at the end and what we were talking about. That's why the flag came in so late." So I think we can all agree the least likely scenario here is that Dan Campbell is lying. That Dan Campbell is lying that an official told him that they got help from New York. That we can scratch that one off the list.
Correct.
Is it possible that the side judge or the line judge or whatever referee he talked to mistakenly said that New York helped out with the play? I think that's plausible.
Oh, I 100% think that that's what the NFL wants us to believe.
Yes. That is the line that they are probably going to walk now. If they're, I mean, at this point, I don't expect any sort of public statement.
Well, no, they're not going to give one. The question here is, or what the problem here with the league making a statement is, there's about 200 cameras and 200 mics all
Right.
over that field.
Yes.
And if it happens to be that Craig was the one that said to him, New York intervened, now they're in a bit, now they've dug themselves even deeper. And
Right.
if it was a side judge, then it's a mistake and mistakes happen and it's a miscommunication. But there's audio out there, there's
Yeah.
video out there. There has to
Release
be.
the tapes, NFL. Release the
There you
tapes.
go. So, in the grand scheme of things, like Dan said, this does not impact the results of the game.
Yeah.
But it does speak to NFL overstepping its protocols and its rules. And that is the issue
Yes.
that we take here, because this is not acceptable in a scenario like that you have now. And look, if it's a simple Craig made a mistake and New York tried to help him with his mistake, but then New York made a mistake, but you keep piling those mistakes on, you're
Right.
just getting deeper and deeper and deeper down your hole of mistakes here. We'll see. There's no go ahead.
I was going to say that the last piece of the puzzle here too, because I talked to some reporters who were there on the field at the time. People seem to think that like everything after the touchdown, everyone was, ready and lined up to kick the field goal and everything was operating like that. I've been told by some of the reporters who were there, like they pretty quickly like convened after the play. Like they didn't just like go on business as usual. Like there was a pretty quick convening, and whether that is someone from New York getting a quick call down or whatever, that's something we still have to figure out. But,
Well,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, there's so many scenarios here that could have happened,
Yeah.
right? The bottom line, though, is at some point the NFL messed up.
Yes.
Whether it was Craig telling Dan ahead of time that it was an okay play, whether it was Craig misidentifying the play was correct, whether it was New York intervening early, somewhere
Yep.
the NFL dropped the ball on that play and the Lions ran a play that they thought was legal, which was not. And maybe I don't know. Like I don't know if we're ever going to really get the
No,
details of this
we aren't.
story.
This is going to fall on the
and-
wayside of the Dan Skipper thing, where like we all kind of
Yeah.
saw what happened, but we didn't hear what happened, and we never will hear what happened.
Right. And for those ask in the chat that are asking about, does the All 22 show that? The All 22 doesn't have audio.
No, doesn't have audio,
so-
and it cuts out after plays end. So we, it's not like a full stream of the entire game. After that play
Right.
ends on the All 22, it's cut. You don't see the refs convene. You don't see any of that sort of stuff.
Right. And then you don't get, in the broadcast version, you get the audio, but you get the broadcast version, which means
Right.
you're not going to get, you just get the camera angles that the broadcast wants you to see. So there's not, there's not really a clean set of audio and video that we have readily available to us, because if we did, we probably wouldn't be doing this podcast right now. We'd be working on
Scouring.
that.
Yes.
Because look, again, in the grand scheme of things, is this a big deal? No, but this is about accountability,
Yeah.
right? And this is about somebody messing up and taking accountability for it. And a lot of people, again, the chat's talking Skipper 2.0, right? Just like what you talk
Yeah.
about. That play was clearly wrong, and there's video of it being clearly wrong, and yet the NFL stood
they dug their
still
heels
towed
in.
the line, right? So
Yeah.
there's no way they're not going to like take the easy route here and just avoid it. But
Yeah.
and it doesn't sound like the Lions are going to push it anymore. But Dan hasn't changed on his stance. They have reached out to the league. Doesn't sound like they liked what they heard back.
Right.
Which in a
Maybe-
lot of cases is, we messed up. Sorry, Dan.
Right.
Right. Which has happened multiple. It feels like
Yeah.
every year.
And apparently
Right?
part of what he heard back was don't tell anybody, because on the radio
Oh,
he's
I
like
bet.
on the radio he's like, yeah, we talked, I sent in about it, but I can't tell you what they said back. And so even that is like, that
Yes.
sounds suspicious. That sounds like them saying like, we messed up, but if
We
you
messed
tell
up.
anybody, we're going to fine and suspend you. Like, I'm not saying that's
And-
exactly what they said, but
Right. But at some point, the
Yeah.
NFL made a mistake, and the NFL wants to present this facade of being infallible. And that's just not the case.
Yeah.
And they made a very there's a very clear mistake on national TV that goes in favor of the darling team and goes against the team that has been on the wrong end of so many of these calls. It just the optics on it
The optics
are
are bad.
terrible.
And
So
here's the part that I don't like about this, because I don't jump in on a lot of officiating controversies, because a lot of times just getting the play on the field wrong, that happens. That is a net, like an unavoidable part of the game, right? You can't control everything. You can't catch everything. It's physically, humanly impossible to catch everything. And so
yeah, like they didn't catch any penalties until the last 2 minutes of the game, for example. Go ahead.
For example, but like that, you enter a tacit agreement watching the NFL, knowing they are going to miss some calls. That is something that just is unavoidable. What we don't have to accept is when they don't follow their own guidelines, when they don't follow their own rules, when there is a set of rules say, hey, you can't intervene for these plays, and then you cross that line. That is a preventable, very clear black and white line that may have been crossed here, and that's what we shouldn't accept. That's the stuff that I think you should actually get upset about, more so than, hey, I thought that wasn't pass interference. Although you're free to get mad about that stuff, because I do all the time too.
And look, it opens them up to so many speculative conversations, right? Because where was the big money, right? That was on KC to win, and like, so now you open that avenue of conversation. And again, we're not going to go down that avenue, but I'm saying you have all of these side conspiracy theories that can run wild now because you're not being transparent.
Yep. We spent a good 16 minutes on that without answering a single one of your guys' questions, but based on our live chat, there were a lot of people that I think wanted us to talk about it, and hopefully that scratched that itch. So let's get to some of you guys' questions. We're going to start with Grandpa QB on Twitter, who's also always in our Twitch chat. Says, why did we switch to more zone? Isn't it easier for newcomer DBs to learn man rather than zone scheme when coming to a new team? Can't see the reasoning for the switch in the Chiefs game.
Yeah, there's one reason. They're fast. They're super, super fast. And if you look at the numbers against Mahomes against man coverage is ranked the 37th quarterback against man. Yet against zone, he's the second best quarterback in the league against zone. The problem is that you end up having to run zone because the receivers are so fast and they have so many fast receivers that if you're not in zone, you're constantly going to be fighting against the speed of those receivers, and then it opens you up for easier plays because they can get separation. If you had a pass rush that could get home very quickly, then you could do more man, because now you're going to put the pressure on them getting open. But the way that the Lions defense is designed, a shift to man seemed inevitable, and unfortunately was not proactive in working against Mahomes. It's just an unfortunate matchup situation that they had
and honestly, I think zone is actually easier for newcomers when it comes to outside corners, right? Because the scheme isn't all that complicated, right? Everyone knows what zone coverage is. Everyone knows what cover 3 is versus cover 1 versus whatever. That stuff isn't hard for them. What's hard is chemistry in between players, right? It's more so the chemistry.
Well, you saw it too. Yeah. You saw them passing guys off incorrectly, right?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I think if you were to look back on that tape, I wouldn't put that much blame on the outside receivers, because a lot of what was happening was in front of them. A lot of what was happening was at the linebacker level. That's where I think there was a breakdown when it comes to your coverage assignments when it comes to zones. I think they were being a little undisciplined or a little bit late in reacting. And so I think zone covers up some of your deficiencies, particularly on the perimeter. When it comes to man versus zone in this situation. But I think there is a fair amount of like skepticism. Like maybe you do prefer to just take your chances at these guys covering really fast guys, because like you said, that is something that Mahomes has struggled with. We,
Yeah.
we certainly know that if the Lions' outside corners had been full health, that they would have played a lot more man. They would have tried
I agree with that.
their luck there, and
Yeah.
if they get beaten over the top once or twice in the game, then you went down swinging.
I'm with you. I agree.
Right. Next question comes from Sawuk, one of our Pride of Detroit direct subscribers. Says, in the future, do the Lions try to stick to the game plan even if they fall behind, i.e., running the ball at a same rate? It seems like if the run game is at least more reliable, even if it burns out a lot of the game time, we could count on it generating points rather than risking on a pass-heavy plan that could fizzle out in a few plays. In other words, are there ways to mount a comeback with a run-heavy offensive plan without burning too much clock?
Yeah, but you have to get good chunks of yardage. That's the issue, right? It is a time thing. Like there's a running clock until you get to a certain point in the game, right? So whether you're passing the ball or running the ball, you're still working on that against that running clock, and so you can run. The issue is you have to be getting chunks of yardage when you run in order to not chew up 8 minutes of running the ball to try and get down the field to get one score. A lot of teams will, when they get down 2 scores, will default to heavier passing because it allows you to move the ball down the field quicker. You can score in 2 minutes instead of 8 minutes, and so it just speeds everything up. And I think that's the ideology behind it. But I agree that they moved away from the running game way too fast. I believe they should have stuck with it more in the third quarter. And then by the fourth quarter, you wouldn't be in the situation that you're in where you only end up running the ball one time or whatever it was, right? So moving away from the running game in the third quarter and defaulting to a little bit more pass heavy in the third, I think is what set them up to be in a bad spot from an offensive standpoint as far as picking plays is concerned.
I don't agree. So they had 2 possessions in the third quarter. One was the first one. They're already down 20-10. They go run, pass, run, pass, and a drive. Pretty balanced.
Well, that's the efficiency part though that I'm talking about. You have to actually get first downs.
Right. Yep.
Go ahead though.
But the next drive is 8 plays, 81 yards and a touchdown. All 8 are passing plays. At 8 for 8. Jared Goff goes 8 for 8, 81 yards, touchdown. 3-point game.
Mm-hmm.
You can move the ball, and it took 4 minutes and 20 seconds off the clock. It accomplished everything you want in that moment. You moved the ball quickly, efficiently downfield. Goff was healthy. Goff was protected. That's why you move away from that game script. Then they go down and score a touchdown. What do the Lions do? Very next drive, run play. -3 yards. Now you're screwed.
Wow.
3 and out. That's it. It's over.
Right.
Next time you get the ball, you're down 17 or whatever it was. You're down 14, 13 with 2 minutes, 2.5 left. They didn't have an opportunity to run the ball more outside of the one drive in which they went 8 for 8 and scored a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
So where, I don't really see where there was an opportunity where they should have run the ball. Should they have run the ball more on the 8 plays, 8 completions drive?
If you do, you set up yourself to not be as predictable.
But that's the thing. They went 8 for 8, and then the very next play was a run play that got blown up behind the line of scrimmage. You were trying to be unpredictable with that run play, and it didn't work.
Mm. Running the ball on first down is not really that unpredictable, though.
No, but if you just win 8 plays, 8 passes, the belief is probably, okay, they're down 2 scores. They are desperate in terms of time. They're just going to do the same thing.
Yeah, well, that was the hard part about the game in general, was that the possessions were way down. I feel like they were, each team had 2 less possessions than a normal game. And so when you have that many fewer opportunities, again, I understand the ideology behind going to it, but I don't know. I don't think you can, even though the 8-play drive that all passes was effective, in my opinion, it still goes away from setting you up later, right? Okay. And that's why I don't like it.
That's fair. There's a related question here from Susanna Asks, can this team play their way out of a hole, or do the Lions always need to keep the lead to have a chance?
Well, I mean, Baltimore was back and forth, right? Like
Sure.
it's they had to be efficient in that game, and they were they were close to perfect that game, right? So, um, yeah, they can play their way out of a hole. The difficult part that they had in this game was the three and out that started with that negative run play.
Yeah.
That drive was a drive it that was a backbreaker essentially
Yeah.
in the game,
Yeah.
right? If you're able to sustain a drive, if you're able to get points out of that drive, it changes the whole dynamics. It was that drive itself, and then that put them in the obvious passing situation. And when you get in obvious passing situations, it obviously starts to favor the defense a little bit more because they can pin their ears back. So, yeah, they have, it's easier, obviously, much easier to run the game plan they want when they're ahead. But I don't think, having two losses on the season is a, like a nail in the coffin on whether or not this team can have a comeback.
Yeah, I think whether they can come back being in a deficit depends on their opponent. If it is a high attacking offense like the Chiefs that they clearly respected, then the Lions are going to get a little bit out of their game script that they want to be in and throw the ball more than they run it. And they aren't they aren't incapable of scoring points and moving the ball when they're only throwing it. Last week was an example of eight plays and doing it. But I look to that Texans game last year. And granted, there are a lot of things about that game that was very much an anomaly, but you're down 23-7 at halftime. It could have been very easy for that team to get away from their game script. They ran the ball 19 times for 82 yards in the second half of that game and threw it 13 times. They ran the ball 6 times more than they passed it, despite being down almost 3 scores at halftime.
Well, that helps the question we were talking about prior as well, right?
They're capable of it, yes. But I think against the Chiefs, they respected that offense so much that they're like, we can't mess around. We can't bleed more time. We are working against the clock here. We need to throw it a bunch. Now, granted, the Texans had a decent offense last year, but it wasn't on the level of the Chiefs.
The Texans turned the ball over twice too in that game, right?
Yep.
When the Lions were needing it, right? Like down the stretch there.
Yeah. So to answer the original question, do I think this team is in particular not great at getting themselves out of hole? I think the answer is actually yes, a little bit, because they thrive so much off the run game and play action that if you take those out of the equation late in the game, they're not going to be as effective. They aren't a downfield passing team. They don't chuck up YOLO balls and get pass interference calls in their direction. But as long as they are close enough to remain balanced in at least some sort of fashion, I do think they have a good chance of erasing some sort of deficit. All right, next question. Do we have time before we go to break? Yeah, let's fit it in one more here. It says, from Nick V, also Pride of Detroit direct subscriber, says, I fully agree that all of this is something that Brian Branch can grow and learn from. My question is, do we think the league/public opinion will let him? By that I mean, is he building a bad reputation and won't get calls based off it? Sue deservedly had a bad rep, but I can think of a few times he made a perfectly normal play and it got a flag or fine. I definitely want Branch to be re-signed and play here long term, but could it be a thing where it's not worth it when the bad rep hurts the team?
I certainly think he can get a reputation in the same way that, like, if you get a guy who commits a lot of penalties, that the refs start looking for that guy to commit more penalties in that way.
Sure.
And you've seen these conversations happen ahead of times, and sometimes they get caught on audio where it's like, you might see a defensive end coming up to a ref and saying, "Hey,
Watch that
this
guy.
tackle,
He's
yeah,
holding.
he likes to grab my
Yeah.
shoulder. He likes to
Yep.
grab your outside shoulder, right?
Yep.
Or whatever it is." And so now the ref is kind of keyed in on that.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that happens before the game. It's I think it's less effective in the game.
Yeah.
But again, it happens. That's why players complain, right?
Yeah.
Because squeaky wheel gets the grease a lot of times. And so yes, referees are going to come into the game saying, yeah, we have to watch to make sure that this, guy isn't jumping off sides or that this guy isn't doing X, Y, or Z. The thing with Branch is it's the stuff he's been fined for. It's been very obvious that he's
Yeah.
going to get fined for it, right?
Right.
Like it's not like he's doing anything sneaky. It's just like so it's not like the refs I think are necessarily going to have a bias. If he takes a guy's helmet and throws it, like you're going to get a penalty for that, right?
Right.
Right? Like that there's
Yes.
it's going to happen. And I feel like that's most of where Branch's stuff has been. The only one that was kind of controversial was the one in Green Bay when he got
The
a little high
launching.
and,
Yeah.
and the launching, right, which got him ejected. That one, but we haven't seen anything like that since, right? So it's not
Yeah.
like they're looking for him to commit penalties like that. I just think he's gaining a reputation, but most of the stuff he's getting in trouble for is like after the play, after the game, not necessarily stuff during the play. And so it's a little different than the Sue stuff.
My biggest concern when it comes to reputation is that now he has a reputation of losing control of his emotions, and
Sure.
other teams are going to take advantage of that. Other teams are going to know that he can be baited into
Sure.
personal foul penalties by just egging on him, punking him, whatever, bullying him, as he put it. And that to me is a legitimate concern, and that's just something that now Branch is going to have to deal with for a little bit, and he's going to have to prove in the upcoming weeks, in the upcoming months, in the upcoming seasons that he's not going to react to that stuff, that he's above that now, that he knows he can not only hurt the team in the moment, but he can hurt them next week or the week after with the suspensions. And so that's something that I'm concerned about with him. But I think it's also worth pointing out that, like, part of what Branch said after the game was to do exactly what you do, to be the squeaky wheel that gets the grease, to say, hey, these guys are punking me during the game and no one's calling it. You guys need to, like, refs, you got to make sure that this thing doesn't escalate before I even get mad because I'm getting hit in the back. I'm getting blindside hit. I'm getting taunted at, whatever it is. Like, he has a responsibility to himself to do that and try to make sure that everything that happens before the game, everything that happens out of his control won't affect him mentally. And so, I don't know. It's a tough situation for him. I don't think it's gotten to a point where it should jeopardize his future here. Dan has gone on now multiple times and defended the guy's character. I mean, this almost feels like a little bit of a JMO case where it's
JMO,
like,
yeah.
Dan has been very adamant that JMO's a good kid and that some of the mistakes he made early in his career aren't something that they expect to continue. And so now he's doing the same with Brian Branch, and it turned out to be mostly, if not 100% correct with JMO. It's been a year since there's been any sort of incident with him. And then, so I think you should have a fair amount of trust that they're going to get it figured out with Branch, and Branch is going to figure it out on his own. Because this regime, Dan, Brad, everyone seems to have been a very good evaluator of character. And so I'm not concerned. I mean, I'm not overly concerned. Right? There is a little concern because obviously this is something that has been a repeat offense in terms of just losing your cool, and you have to imagine the Lions have talked to him once about it. So the fact that there's a second time to talk to him about it is not great, but this is a very well managed team. So I have a hard time being overly concerned about it.
Yeah, I think he's just got to be more vocal with the refs. And, the difficult part will be if you're playing the Chiefs, on Sunday night and the refs or have been
right.
told stuff, and they see obvious plays happen in front of them that they sometimes they just aren't going to call it. It's just weird circumstance, right? Circumstance.
Sure. All right. I'll let you have that one in before we go to break here. When we come back, more of your Lions questions right here on the Midweek Mailbag. We will be right back.
Just putting a bow on it.
All right. Let's get through some alerts and then we'll answer some of your guys' question. Also, I don't know. Usually we do a film review after this stream for a little bit, 30, 40 minutes. I don't have
Let's
an
review
idea.
all the penalties against the Chiefs.
Okay,
All the penalties called against the Chiefs. Let's review them all.
So we got one. We got a 5-second video of watching Chris Jones jump off sides. Yeah, so if you guys have idea on what you guys want to watch, we can do that. Like I said, I don't really have anything in particular I want to revisit. So keep that in mind. I'll try to keep an eyes on it. What are the Lions tweeting? This more Lomas Brown stuff? Yeah, it is. Okay. Paper Bag, thank you for the follow. Yevitz, thank you for the 48 months, 4 frickin' years. Subscribe to us on Twitch. Appreciate that. G Money, 31 months subscribed to us on Twitch. Appreciate that as well. Kylo Den, 14 months, says Dan Campbell should be allowed to challenge one referee per game to a ruling by combat. Well, I mean, for as bad as he is at challenging plays, I'm pretty sure he would have a 100% success rate on challenge by combat. J-Man Jr., thank you for the 51 months subscribed to us on Twitch. AGT Smith, thank you for the 24 months. Says 2 years, boys. Let's fucking go. FDP. Hockey, 30 months subscribed to the channel. Says, guess we'll only be 15-2 now. Yeah. Back-to-back 15-2 seasons. Tough times here.
Mm-hmm.
If the Lions lose one more game, Bill Barnwell will be right. Regression from 15-2 to whatever the Lions finish. 14-3. 13-4. Palermo. That's not right. Baller Mio. 30 months subscribed to the channel says, who is going to be playing receiver for the Bucs on Monday? Maybe Mike Evans. It sounds like they're going to at least give Mike Evans some practice this week. I don't know if that means... I don't know how they treat players coming back from long-term-ish injuries.
Well, his injury, what's it kept him out? 3 weeks? 2 weeks?
I think it's 3.
Yeah. It sounds like Ibuka is not going to play. That's a tough one. He's been their guy.
Yeah.
So, take advantage of that.
Yep.
Did they say, I forget, they said something on Godwin too. Was Godwin not?
Godwin's not coming back either.
Oh, jeez. So, Sterling Shepard, Tez Johnson.
It's kind of they're one.
Mike Evans, Ms. Maybe, Shepard, and Tez.
Yeah.
They ran a lot more. They had to go to 12 personnel a lot when they lost Ibuka. So
it might be different when you have a full week to prepare for that, but
yeah.
I mean, Tez had that long touchdown, right, where he did the little crazy flip in the end zone, and then thought the MVP chants were for him.
Receivers are definitely a different bunch. Just assume everything is for them.
Yeah. It was if you haven't seen the clip, it's very, very funny.
Yeah. I tell you, on paper, the Lions look like they should do very well against this Bucs team. But the thing is Baker has defied the odds so many times this season. It's been kind of crazy.
I want you to back up to why do you think the Lions are such a heavy favorite just looking on paper?
I mean, look, they don't have the receivers. The right side of their offensive line is bad.
That's fair. But I mean, the receiver thing is certainly offset by the fact that the Lions might be missing literally every starter in the secondary.
Right, but so Baker is what's made Baker so successful is he has just found he has just uncorked the vertical passing game.
Yeah.
Right. He's been wildly successful going vertical in this offense. He hasn't been as efficient when he gets in the red zone. He hasn't been as efficient on third downs, but he has unlocked
Yeah.
the vertical passing game has just unlocked him, and he has just leaned into it. So when you're when you have when your receivers that are helping you unlock the vertical passing game are not available, that kind of hurts Baker,
Sure.
right? But like I said, he's been magical. His starting right guard, starting right tackle, both on IR, both
Yep.
replacements, garbage. They've been
Garbage.
playing, well, they've been playing, they've
Ahead.
been playing Aiden like 50% on the right side, 50% on the left side. I would play Aiden
Don't
over
move
the
him.
right tackle all game. I am not joking. All game. It's going to be one of my keys to victory. Just play Aiden on the right side, because they have not been good.
Yeah.
Their run game
I'll throw
has
this on the screen real quick. This is
it's such
the PFF lineup. So you got Haggard, who is 58 out of 79 total yards.
Haggard is better than Klein, who
Yeah.
was starting, and Klein is
Heck.
even worse.
Heck
Heck
has
is
the third worst run blocking grade amongst tackles and the, what is that, seventh or ninth, maybe ninth worst pass blocking grade.
go block Aiden Hutchinson all game.
Yeah.
Have fun. They don't use their tight ends a ton in the
Bartison's
passing
having a
game,
tough
which they're
year.
going to have to now. Yeah,
man.
they're all like, even Barton is
Why
not
isn't-
playing great.
That's weird that, what? I'm, okay. PFF is a little screwed up because Barton is their center, correct?
Correct.
But they're comparing him to tackles. And then Bredesen is a
Well,
guard.
because he
and they're
played,
comparing him to
because he
centers.
was a tackle in college,
Yeah.
and so they probably are still locked on that.
But anyways, yeah, Aleem coming back
So-
is certainly going to have an effect on all of this as well. Like,
Right.
you just like
So-
you want to put Aleem over Haggard and Aiden over Heck and just havoc.
Have fun. And then they're going to keep their tight. They're going to have to keep their tight ends, which
Yeah.
then so when you have your receivers, you can keep your tight ends and not have to use your tight ends as much. But now that you don't have your receivers, like Kate Otten is all of a sudden a guy that you need to use, and so now they're going to have more two tight end sets. And when you have more two tight end sets, it's gonna help you in your blocking game. But now you're taking away
A deep
another
threat.
option in the vertical passing, right?
Yep.
And so on paper,
Yeah.
the Lions should have an advantage. And then when you flip it in their defense, they have a good secondary, but they should be able to, you can run on them, and you should be able to pass on them
think
too.
they can
like
run
they have
on
a
them?
good second. I think they can do a little bit of both. Like you can hit the edges
DV
on these guys better than in the middle.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say I haven't looked fully into their rankings. I
mean,
was going to do that mostly today, but DVOA, I think they're a top 5 run defense.
Yeah, in DVOA, they are.
Yeah.
Here,
6.
let me
They're 6.
pull mine up. They only allow 88 yards per game on the ground, 3.7 yards per rush. Even their EPA is good. They don't allow a lot of rushes, and they have good success. They've been pretty good against not allowing runs over expectation.
Yeah.
But they are one of the worst teams in creating yards before contact. Right? So they're
preventing
not
yards before contact.
correct.
Yeah.
They're allowing like a yard and a half of push before they're getting in contact with the running back. And so for the Lions, like that opens things up for them a little bit. So
Sure.
I think the Lions should be able to hit some edges on these guys, and it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
The way that the Bucs are going to offset that is they're going to blitz. They're going to, and that's run blitz as well, right?
Right.
So, but when you look at like Jared Goff against the blitz, he's the second best quarterback in the league against the
Sure.
blitz, right? Like his EPA against the blitz is 0.56 when you blitz him, like when he passing against the blitz. Like I'm not scared of the blitz. And we talked about this in our post game just a tick. Dan Campbell and Todd Bowles know each other like intimately well for like a really long time, like Bowles was a coach when Campbell was still a player when they were on the same team. And so they seem that they've played each other in the playoffs. They've played each other each of the last 2 seasons as well. Like these coaches
Yeah,
know
that is true.
what, each other. And so I don't think you're going to, part of what makes the Bucks defense so good is that you're not always prepared for them from a blitz standpoint. In a very similar vein with the Vikings. The Vikings end up being so good because you're not ready for the unique style of defense that they have.
Right.
The Lions have played the Bucks 3 times in the last 2 years. They played the Vikings 4 times in the last 2 years. Like
Right.
they've seen these. That's why they do well against the Vikings and the Bucks, because they're not as surprised. So, and while the secondary might be the strongest part of their defense, I think the Lions can throw on them as well. So
Yeah, I mean, they're 20th in DVOA in pass defense, oddly enough.
well, they're giving up a lot of yak. They are getting quick pressure, so that's going to be something the Lions have to take care of.
Yeah.
Is the pressure, and the pressure rate has been successful, and a lot of that's because of the blitzes and stuff like that.
Right.
But Lions have held up. Like they still haven't given up 10 sacks on the season yet. You know what I mean? Like they're still a top 10 offensive line in sacks and sacks rate. Pressure rate, they're just outside of the top 10 at 11. But it's a different style of front than you had last week against KC, because this is more attacking. They're
Yeah.
going to be faster, and so
EPA too, though. Like EPA, they are the number one run defense in the league, but they're 20th against the pass.
Okay.
This is
My numbers
you
are
might be
slightly different than
you
yours.
might be
I have
using NFL
6.
Pro.
Yeah.
You're using
I am.
NFL Pro. Yeah, I'm
Their
using
NFL Pro for that is 6. Are you using Sumner?
RB DSM, whatever that thing.
Okay.
The Ben Baldwin.
There's 6 in NFL Pro.
I think
But
the difference between those two models, I think one counts scrambles, one doesn't.
right.
Either way, very good statistical run defense, which is why I'm a little bit more skeptical about the Lions being able to move the ball offensively. But through the pass,
I think it's going to end up being a passing game.
Yeah.
It's going to be a passing game on both sides.
Yeah.
And the question is, down receivers, can Baker still keep that magic going?
Yeah.
He's been great so far.
He sure has.
He's been able to make it work. But Goff is one of the most efficient passers in the league.
Yep.
Here, these are EPAs for him. Okay, EPA per dropback. He's 5th.
Who's he? Which one? Goff or
Goff.
Baker? Okay.
Goff. Baker is 6th in EPA per dropback. Against man, he's 3rd. Against zone, Goff. So against man, he's 3rd. Against zone, he's 10th. EPA in play action, 4th. EPA in the red zone, 1. EPA versus the blitz, 2.
Now, does that include his in the red zone? Does that include his receiving stats in the red zone?
No, that's just his passing. Even versus pressure, he's still 18. He's still in the round middle of the road. Like this if you pressure him, he's garbage. In consideration how he is everywhere else, I guess. But so Mayfield EPA per dropback 6 versus man coverage 22nd versus zone number 1. He's the one guy ahead of Mahomes against zone.
God, I wish the corners were healthy, man.
Yeah,
but I guess if you're going up against backup receivers, maybe you say, we trust Rock, we trust Amik. Although I'm kind of curious, really quick, because now I do think Strickland is probably coming back, assuming he clears waivers. But do you think there's a chance that maybe you add Fuller, maybe Fuller and what's his name and Amik start on the outside, and then maybe you throw Rock back at safety?
Maybe. That's a maybe. It's possible. I mean,
it's kind of what I'm feeling. Like I said, I do think Strickland's going to be back. It was weird to see, of all positions, that they cut safety to be one of them
Right.
for a move that they haven't even made yet, right? Like there is now an open spot on the roster. I'm assuming that's the spot for Aleem, and you just create it now so that you can bring Strickland back.
Right.
And then you bring Strickland back to the practice squad. You probably elevate him for the game, because if you make that move when you elevate Aleem, which is almost certainly going to come on, well, I guess Monday afternoon, before the Monday night game. But you don't want to release Strickland then, obviously, because then he won't be available for the game. We're going to talk more about Fuller in the second segment, so I don't want to get too deep into that yet.
One thing I wanted to point out with Baker here is that he's the third best on play action. Okay. But they run play action the 31st. They're the 31st team in actually running it. So
they're great at it, but they just don't do it.
Correct. And I thought that was weird.
That is weird.
And now in the red zone, his EPA 21st, against the blitz 22nd. And then, but what's weird is versus pressure 4th. So like it's his numbers are a little wonky. But the thing that I was going here was, if you run him against man, it's a much better. It seems like you have a much better chance than against zone. Against zone, he's Patrick Mahomes level quarterback against zone.
Yeah.
So, and that's going to be a huge key, right? Because like, can the Lions still run man? Because if they can't, you're kind of playing into what's been making Baker so successful.
Right.
So, and again, these are just numbers, like the actual gameplay and how things play out on the field. But like, just breaking things down, it's like, boy, on paper, if the Lions run their man, they should have a little advantage. If he doesn't have his receivers, there should be a little bit of an advantage. And for a game that should be a passing game, the Lions should have the advantage to win this game.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. There's still a lot to be. I still have to go through and uncover some stuff, but this could literally come down to what's better, the Lions offense or Baker Mayfield.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because
it's one of those rare times in which the quarterback versus quarterback matchup is actually apropos, because they're not actually, facing literally each other, but they are the keys to the game.
But like, I think the Lions, there's so many spots where it's like, you should have a huge advantage. Just play Aiden over the right side.
Okay, but that one.
Aiden over the right side is a huge advantage.
Yes, I agree.
You should have a huge advantage there. But Lions are going to have to work on offense, but their offense should be able to move the ball. And like I said, they have a good secondary, but they've been giving up yards. And one of the reasons they haven't been giving up as many rushing yards, is because they've been giving up a lot more passing yards too. But they've also been giving up passing yards because teams have had to try and keep pace with Baker. So
stats a lie a little bit.
Yeah, you got to Baker is the key in this game.
Yeah.
And he has been crazy. He's crazy this year.
Just it really the two place series where he scrambles for a first down on like a 3rd and 18 or whatever it was, and then the very next play he throws a 60-yard bomb or whatever. That was just insane. That was just insane.
And there was a 3rd down play where he's like, I don't even remember what 3rd and whatever, and he's like, trying to get it. I guess I'll just run. And then he's like, oh, look, I stepped one way and the 3 guys flew past him. And he's like, oh, I'll just walk for the first down. I like just weird stuff.
Yeah.
Like, he should have been stopped 3 times, and instead he gets like this huge first down, and then next play, a couple plays later, then they're back in the end zone again. And the reason I think why his red zone score production is so low is because he's throwing touchdowns from outside the red zone. And when they get in the red zone and they're trying to run, their running game has been a little bit ineffective.
Right. Now you're missing your top running back.
Yeah, that's the thing where it gets even crazier. Their top running back, his EPA is bad, like bad. But the backup, Rashad White, he's great.
He's playing well.
His efficiency is like one of the best in the league. But Bucky Irvin is clearly the better back, but his numbers are bad. But I don't know.
Maybe their offensive line is starting to gel.
It's weird because if you look at the Lions, it's similar in a lot of ways where Gibbs's EPA is much lower than Montgomery's.
Right.
Right. And I think that's where the volume comes into play with
Right.
EPA and running backs and stuff. Right.
Right. And it's usage too. Like,
right.
You're
Exactly.
getting, if it's a 3rd and short and you're putting Montgomery out there, well, a success on a 3rd and short is conversion. So like a 3-yard run.
Mm-hmm.
But if you put Gibbs out there on 1st down and he only gets 2, that's a failure. That's bad EPA. That's bad success rate.
Right. So his success rate is actually kind of low. His
Gibbs's?
EPA is low. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, but again, when you look at running backs again with EPA, they're all kind of like that.
Yeah.
Like there's only like 10 backs in the league who have an EPA of like starting backs. There's only like 10 that have like a positive EPA.
Yes.
Like, and I think Gibbs is like actually like 0 or something like that.
I mean, that's why
it's pretty low.
Like extreme analytic people are like, don't ever run the ball. It's a negative EPA most of the time.
Right. But you got to understand, it is, but you have to.
But you have to, otherwise you can't do everything else. You can't just throw it a million times. Play action's not going to work if you never throw the ball. Or never run the ball.
And the Lions lean on that play action too.
Yes, they do. Flair 149, they give the 58 months at tier 2, by the way. Says Pacific time here. Good morning. Any coffee order suggestions? I can't do Dan's. You just what do you drink? You're a coffee drinker.
Yeah. It's October, so I don't quite go to the pumpkin, but I do introduce a more hazelnut type of it's a little bit more fall-y. I like a little hazelnut creamer.
Are you brand loyal to a coffee?
Yeah, I'm a little snobby. I've tried different ones, but the one that I like is just just kind of a generic thing. It's just a generic coffee, but it's the one that I like.
You're being so squirrely about it. Are you trying to?
It's just the it's a Costco Colombian blend coffee. It's not, like I said, it's not anything special, but it happens to be aligned with what I'm preferring. I've tried, I don't know, for the last few years, I've been trying a lot of different types, and I just haven't really landed on anything. I've tried grinding my own so that it's fresh in the morning. I've tried, I don't know.
Nick, I'm not saying it doesn't work. Play action won't work if your run game isn't good. I'm saying if you literally never run the ball, play action is not going to work. Like if you are, if it's like a 90-10 split, play action is going to be less effective.
I've been looking at the splits on the type of blocking that the Lions have done, and like how the backs are working within those different splits.
Yeah.
The one that both backs have a positive EPA in is duo. And I think that's
that all came from the Baltimore game. Like 100% of it.
Probably. And what's weird is, again, they run a lot of zone, and that's what Gibbs is on the field a lot for, but that's like their worst. But again, I think that is a volume statistic, right? Like you're running a lot more of it, so there's not as effective.
DJ Reader ranked 74th out of 192 eligible DTs this year. Facts are stubborn things. They don't care about your feelings. I'm assuming you're talking about PFF grade, and PFF grades, I guess you can say, are facts, but they're also subjective facts, right? PFFs involves a grading system which is standardized amongst people grading them. It's not like yardage where it's like, that is a pure fact. He gained 3 yards on this play. He gained 4 yards on this play. This is a grading system where people who don't necessarily know the assignment, don't know what a player is told, grades them on what they do. And so I am much more inclined to believe Dan Campbell when he says DJ Reader has been unbelievable this year than I am a PFF grading system. I'm not saying you should throw all PFF grading systems out. It's a very nice and easy way to get a general idea of how a team, a player, whatever is performing. But I'm more inclined when I use PFF to use some of their other stats, to use pressures, to use, depth of target, to use average, broken tackles, things like that, which again, like not 100% objective. There's a subjectivity to broken tackles. There's a subjectivity to pressure, but I wouldn't hold this up and say you can't say that Ali McNeil or DJ Reader or whatever is having a good season because look at their PFF grade, look at their PFF ranking. Just part of the puzzle. And I do think nose tackles in general.
Nose tackles always score low in PFF.
They do.
Yeah.
I think what you always have to be very careful when you're using advanced stats is trying to fully know what they're measuring. And the greatest example I use for this is that the Lions are always going to be a bottom 5 team in ESPN's pass rush win rate. 100% of the time, because that stat is how quickly, within 2.5 seconds, are you winning your rep? Are you getting by the guy in front of you? And that's not what the Lions are really looking in their defenders to do.
Correct.
They are looking for them to push the pocket, close up the pocket, not win, because if you run by your guy in less than that, that opens up a scrambling lane. And so the Lions are just going to continually be penalized by that, and you'll look at it and be like, wow, their pass rush sucks. Same thing with time to throw, right? They're going to look bad in that stat as well because, again, they're willing to give quarterbacks a long time to throw because they play man coverage. They expect their corners to hold up. And then, when it hits probably right around that 2.5 second mark, they're expecting the clock to go off in the quarterback's head, and they'll look around and there's nowhere to go. And then you get the sack.
Yeah. So we're talking a half second too in a lot of these.
Right. So I don't know.
Look, and nose tackles are always getting graded negatively in PFF because a lot of times the assignments are plug lanes, and that doesn't constitute a win, and that ends up being, oh, you got moved off your spot. That's a negative, and so, yeah.
Yep. Di Parente, thank you for the 29 months subscribed on Twitch. No problem. Like I said, I don't mind you bringing up PFF grades. I reference them plenty of times. It's just you always have to be a little bit careful.
Yeah, it's anything. Like all statistics.
Yeah.
You can find them and bend them any which way you want.
You sure can. Which is why on paper involves 30 statistics per unit. To just be like, this is what this is, but this is also what this says. Somehow, the Lions are first in pressure and pressure rate, but somehow 29th in ESPN's pass rush win rate. It's all over the place. But there was one other thing. Who starts for Branch, assuming he loses his appeal? I mean, Harper and Rocky.
It's either yeah, one of those two.
And it might be both if if Kirby doesn't play.
Did you happen to see my tweet about when Harper made that play?
Yeah.
My daughter Harper in the other room, listening to me, Laura, and my oldest watch the game. Harper makes that play, and I'm like, "Good job, Harper!" And then my Harper from the other room, is like, slay. I'm like, oh, my middle schooler. She says the word slay so much now that the little one is like, did Harper use that word last year? And I was like, no, it just feels like she's been saying it forever because she says it so much.
Slay.
But I remember being in middle school, and I'm sure we all used overused.
What is happening?
I think that was a high school thing too, right?
I'm sorry, my phone's blowing up for some reason. All right, we're good. Second segment? I think we should get into the second segment. If you guys have more questions, we'll answer them after. I saw some suggestions on Film Breakdown. Chris Jones versus the Lions offensive line. Some Dan Skipper suggestions. Meek. Keep them coming. Let me think about it.
Meek had a tough game.
Yeah. He did. All right. Let's get back to the other questions. We got enough? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, that'll be enough. Screenplays. That's a good one, too. All right. Here we go. And welcome back here to the Midweek Mailbag here on the Pride of Detroit podcast channel. Let's get back to some of your questions here. Ryan P., one of our Pride of Detroit direct subscribers, asks, Lions got to establish the run. Rush EPA and success rates both need boosts by December. There are 4 variables to look at and all play a part. The offensive coordinator, personnel and play calling, Hank as the run game coordinator. He's involved with technique and schemes. New blood on the offensive line. And then choice as a running backs coach. Where does the blame lie?
Where does the blame lie for them not being
up to their standards?
Or top 5, I guess.
Sure.
They're still not a bad running team, and I think that's where it gets lost. A lot of times, we get so used to them being dominant in some areas that when they're not dominant, we think that, they're all of a sudden like bad, right?
Sure.
They're 8th in DVOA. That's certainly not where they've been in the past.
Yep.
And they've been average in a lot of statistical areas. Rushing yards per play has been average. Like Ryan pointed out, the EPA is low, but we were kind of talking about this in between segments here, that rushing EPA is kind of low by default because of the way EPA is graded. But they haven't had a lot of explosive plays.
Yeah.
They've been in a lower end of that, and I think that's something that we've been more accustomed to. Right, because you have such good blocking receivers, you're able to create holes with your offensive line, and then you have talented backs, and they've you can hit these kind of chunk plays, and I feel like that's really where they've been held back a little bit.
Yeah.
Not having those big explosive plays has really hurt their like I said, both those things that we just talked about, with like the yards per play, EPA per play, like those are all impacted by not having these big explosive plays. So could they be more successful? Yeah, so he brings up success rate as well. Yeah, they've been kind of middle of the pack in success rate as well. And I do think some of this is the new personnel, right?
Yeah.
Looking early in the season, it was, are you acclimating the guards properly? The rookie guards are, the younger guards are still going to have, they're still having mistakes here and there. That comes with having younger guards. Like that's part of it. We talked in the first segment about how they've moved away from the run in the second half of the Chiefs game. And we saw that in week 1 against the Packers too. Both times they were behind, they kind of went away from the run. And so that's played into some of the low statistics. So I don't think there's just like one thing and like one like finger point, like, oh, this is the problem.
Yeah.
I think it's a combination of a handful of little things that haven't been working collectively. And it's led to a more moderate, still top 10, I think, rushing attack, but not this elite dominating attack we've seen in the year, like a year or two ago.
Yeah, I think things we can pretty much throw out though, like Hank as a run game coordinator, that just felt like a promotion by title. Yeah, he was heavily involved in all of that beforehand, so I don't think that is a change from last year to this year. I would say I haven't really noticed. To me, I would say most of the run game issues are up front. They're not necessarily with the backs. Like maybe there's a play here or there where You'd expect Jameer to break a tackle, or you'd expect him to hit this hole, and maybe he missed it. But in general, to me, it seems like the blocking isn't where it was before. FTN Fantasy, that hosts DVOA, has a stat called stuffed percentage. So the amount of times your runs are getting stuffed, gaining 0 or negative yards, or maybe even 1 yard is included in that. Last year, that number was 15%. They were only getting stuffed on 15% of their runs. That was, I believe, 7th in the NFL, 7th best, 7th lowest percentage. This year, it's up to 17%. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot. It's a 2% jump, but they're all the way down at 17th compared to the rest of the league. And so it does feel to me that there are a lot more 1 yard gain, 2 yard gains, negative yard gains, stuffed at the line. And that tells me it's an offensive line problem. That tells me they're still working out the kinks with their new guys. They're still working on the chemistry in the interior. Graham is still adjusting to center. All those things I think are true, because we saw it a lot in week 1 where there was a lot of miscommunications. We saw it on the negative 3 yard run in the fourth quarter against the Chiefs where no one had the linebacker. Just wide open, negative. I mean, those are the plays that matter the most. Those are the plays that are so critical to this offense staying on schedule, because that is something. The reason they run the ball as much as they do is because it gets them into easy down and distances. And so when you start with a negative 3 yard play on first down, the whole point of running the ball is kind of thrown out of the window. So I think it's mostly surrounding their offensive line play, which I don't think is quite up to their standards. But there's like you said, there's never just one simple solution there. There's never one, like, this is the problem, and as soon as they fix that, everything's just going to be A-okay. But I think if you look deeper at some of these metrics, you just see an offensive line that isn't creating the holes. That I shouldn't say isn't creating the holes, because it feels like when they're all on the same page, they're exactly where they were last year. You look at that Baltimore game. You look at the second quarter of the Chiefs game. They were moving people in that Chiefs game. They were in control before they weren't. And so I feel like it's just a matter of, like, getting all that chemistry down, getting all the MAs out. Once that is cleaned up, they're going to look a lot better. They're going to look a lot closer to where they were last year. Like I said, there's more than that, but if I had to concentrate like one thing, it's that offensive line chemistry, and it should be coming.
They're also facing a stacked box about a third of the time. That's a top 5.
An increase from last year?
I'm not sure. I was trying to look that up. Last year they were facing stacked boxes 22.7% of the time. This year they're up to 31. So they're facing a lot more stacked boxes this year. And I think, but that's also one of the reasons why I think the passing game has been a little bit more efficient. Teams have been selling out to stack the run. And in last game against the Chiefs weren't stacking the box in the second half, so their number overall is actually kind of low. I think it was like 22% for the Chiefs. But if you go back, Cincy was like at 38. The Browns were at like 40. They stacked the box like 44% of the time. The Ravens were at 38 as well. Like it was even higher than a third of the time. That's just what they're averaging. And so you're getting stacked boxes, 38, 45% of the time or whatever it was. It's hard to run against as well.
No question. Next question here comes from Jacob B., one of our Pride of Detroit direct subscribers, says, what are the biggest adjustments or takeaways each coordinator should take from their loss to Kansas City and going into this game against the Bucs?
Well, the hard part is it's completely different opponent, right? So, my stance on for Morton is, I would like to see more balance, right? I know he had to kind of go to a passing attack once they got into that spot, and we talked about that in the first segment. But I would hope he would lean a little bit more towards more balance. That's just my personal preference. I think it sets things up a little bit. It makes the passing game easier if you at least are threatening in the run game. With Shep, I don't know, because it's hard, because he had to make his adjustments based on the personnel around him. With injuries at with safeties that are ailing and outside corners that are hurt, he had to go to more zone, even though I don't think that's what he wanted to do. He continues to use three linebackers at a almost unprecedented level in today's NFL,
Right.
right? In today's NFL.
Yes.
But and I think that stretched him a little bit thin in what he wanted to accomplish. Really put a lot on the linebackers in this game. Linebackers were asked to press the line of scrimmage. They were also asked to cover, and it just there was a lot being asked of them. And you know, I don't know if there was anything he could have done differently, right? Because of the personnel he had on the field or available to him, but I don't know. I do look at him continuing to use his linebackers at such a high rate, and that worries me in situations where you play a team like the Bucks, who are very good against the pass, not as good as are very good
At
passing,
passing. Yeah.
and not as great running. Um, you're going to ask now if you continue to use your linebackers at that high of a level, now you're asking Derek Barnes to do a lot more coverage or Alex Anzalone to do a lot more coverage, and that's a harder way to live as a defense. But again, I don't know what he's going to do. Like he doesn't really have the horses to play in sub packages a lot right now.
But the question is, because of all the Buccaneers injuries at wide receiver, is this a game where you're like, you know what? It may be our backups, but we trust our backups in man coverage against their backups. We think that's an okay matchup rather than when Chris Godwin and Emeka Buka are out there and maybe Mike Evans.
Right.
Without all three of those guys, maybe they think they have a better fighting chance at doing what they're most comfortable doing, which is man coverage with a sprinkling. Like they still probably want to be in base more than maybe you're comfortable with. But like they could sprinkle some nickel if they wanted in there. But again, I still don't really know who their primary nickel is right now.
Well, it was Mollett,
Right.
And I'm
That
not
didn't go so hot.
that didn't work so right. So now it's like, hey, didn't Eric Hallett have some experience at nickel, right?
Right.
So
Yeah. So I'm with you. Like defensively, just felt like Shep was in between a rock and a hard place there, where what he wanted to do, he couldn't do. And that's what we said a lot of Aaron Glenn in the previous years, right? He's like, he wanted to do this with their offense, but he couldn't because the horses weren't there. And finally seemed like it turned around a little bit last year and continued this year. And now the injuries are happening again. So we'll see how they respond offensively. I'm trying to think of anything beyond being more balanced that they need to learn from that past Chiefs game. I don't really have anything in particular. I know there's a lot of concern about Detroit's efficiency when it comes to screenplays. And in fact, just like getting Gibbs involved in the passing game in general. Like, I feel like I've been hoodwinked for the 7th year in a row where it's just like we kept hyping it up in the offseason. We're going to see a whole bunch of Gibbs on the outside. He's going to catch way more passes than he did in previous years. And that just has not been there at all this season. And I even asked John Morton about it a couple weeks. He's like, well, it's there in our playbook. We just haven't used it yet. I'm like, okay, but
23 catches for 112 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah, that's nothing. That's nothing. That's a huge disappointment. And so maybe that becomes part of the game plan a little bit. It's just figuring out ways to get the ball to Jameer in space. If the run game isn't creating those explosive plays, there got to be other ways to do it. And you have to be more efficient with the screen passes, whether they're wide receiver screens or running back screens. Something there is not clicking the way it has before. Like they have not been a terrible screen pass team for years. They've been decent at it. I don't know why it's not working now.
I think they telegraph their screens is in my opinion. Because you run in most of the screens that they've been running have been like you're kind of running with JMO and then you offset him back, and it just you run a like trips bunch on the outside to the right, and it's like, hey, look, they're gonna run a screen again, and for me, I feel like if I can see it, the people who are studying them ahead of time can see it. Those defensive coaches, their opponents, and so. in my opinion, that's what it is. I think it's a little bit slow developing and a little bit telegraphed.
Yeah.
You prevent that. You set that up and you throw a different route.
Sure.
Throw a backside Texas route, and then away you go.
There you go. Tim Bowers on Twitter with the next question says, should we ever expect quick pressures against mobile quarterbacks or when we try to crush the pocket? And going forward, will the rare times we run zone ever be good? Was Sunday's red zone woes due to personnel? I'm sorry. Was Sunday's zone woes due to personnel, a bad day for linebackers, or Mahomes and Reed being Mahomes and Reed?
All right, one at a time.
Yeah, let's because we already talked about zone, let's go there first. I think a lot of it was personnel. As good as the linebackers have been, I think zone coverage is probably their weakest point.
Yeah, and it's Mahomes' best.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just a bad combination of those two things. And as we explained, I think they went zone because they felt like they didn't have any other options with their personnel.
Again, it's a smart it's a smart way that the Kansas City has built their roster, right? Yeah. You threaten with speed, you force teams into zone where you put your quarterback in a good situation. So you got to give credit to Mahomes and Reed and how that roster is constructed.
Yep. As for mobile quarterbacks, quick pressure, what are your thoughts there?
Well, my thoughts are if you quick pressure and you miss, you're going to end up with where we were 4 years ago, when quarterbacks are running 80 yards on us. And then you get articles from certain members of the media that are talking about how Justin Fields is the best player in the game, and how even though Detroit beat Chicago, Justin Fields is clearly the best, and they should have took Fields over Panay. And I don't like seeing those articles, and so that's what's going to happen if you end up not doing the contain that you do. So, yeah, I think they're going to try and get more pass rush on this one, but in this upcoming game against the Bucs. But don't sleep on Baker's ability to get his legs, and so that may cause them to be a little bit more contain and squeeze again.
Yeah. It does feel like that is a staple of what they want to do. And listen, it can be frustrating at times when it takes as long as it does to get to a quarterback and you're not racking up the sacks. But then you also have a day like you did against Baltimore, and you're just like, that is exactly how it's supposed to work. That is as
you got 7 sacks that game, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. And listen, the thing that makes it tough now is that it does rely on good man-to-man coverage, and that's something that I'm not sure the Lions are capable of doing right now. Maybe it is against a Bucs team that's missing all the receivers they are. Maybe it isn't. But if you can't do that, the question becomes like, how do you compensate for that? And we've heard Dan say, like, well, listen, we're going to need a little bit more juice up front. We're going to need our linebackers to be a little bit better. Maybe it means turning the scales up on our blitzing, which has been, I think, relatively low compared to previous years. Didn't feel like they blitzed at all last week.
Blitz rate is under 29 now. Yeah. And yes, they didn't blitz much. I think they blitzed 18% last week, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're under 29.
29, and that's compared to what last year? I'm curious.
They were 38 at one, I think, near the end of the season. Now they're at 28.
Yeah.
So about 10% lower.
A pretty significant turn down. So like maybe you just have to crank that up a little bit. Or maybe you become a little bit more of like an upfield pass rush. Maybe the addition of Lalim McNeil allows you to do that. Allows you to be a little bit more comfortable in beating a guy one-on-one right away, and that funneling someone to Aiden, or Aiden funneling someone to Aleem. Working in tandem there might help a little bit, but it's definitely a little bit of a conundrum when you don't have the man corners to operate how the Lions want to operate.
Yeah, look, they're a top 10 team when it comes to pressure rate, which means that when they have the time, they're getting there, right?
Yeah.
They're getting there at 37.5% of the time. Like they're still, but they just require the time. They've got 84 pressures on the season. That's a top 10. They've got 19 sacks. That's top 5. They've got a sack rate of 8.5. That's top 5. Like, it's not that they're not a pressure team. They just, the approach that they have just takes time to be effective.
Yep.
And again, we're talking like half a second, right?
Right. Well, when it comes to the coverage, compensating, working in marriage with the pass rush, there's one new player in town that might be key to that. And Daniel G at Hardsticks11 on Twitter asks, what do you expect from Kendall Fuller? Is there a chance he can catch on quick to play this Monday?
I don't know. The thing is I would say no, but then you just saw Mollett go get signed and play that weekend, right? Like,
Yep.
so they're kind of in a spot where you can't rule anything out. But traditionally, you would say no. At the same time, if they're already, Dan Campbell's already said Terrion and Maddox aren't going to play. So, yeah, I'm not going to rule it out. That's for sure.
The the one thing that's mildly curious about this transaction is that it happened so early in the week. A lot of times when the Lions are going to sign someone to their practice squad where they try them out and add them, they do it like right before their first practice of the season, right? Like they'll announce it 4 p.m. or sometimes even before that. They signed this dude on Tuesday. They signed him right away so that he could get in the building ASAP. Maybe I'm reading too much into that.
Maybe a little.
But we're also talking about a 9-year veteran with 100-plus starts in his career.
Right. And that's why they leaned on Mollett, because he has 7 years worth of experience, right? Yeah.
And so, to me, this is a guy that knows man coverage, knows pretty much every defense that's out there. The question just becomes, okay, what have you been doing since February when you got cut? How football shape are you in? How long is it going to take for you to just like even practice?
And he had injuries too last year,
yep,
right?
Concussions.
Wasn't that the case?
Yeah. Things like that. So the only thing that gives me pause about him potentially even starting this week is just that. Like, he has not been on a football team in 8 months. And so, like with Aleem McNeil, a lot of times with a player who just hasn't been even been a part of practice, you want to give him a couple weeks to get his feet going. But at the same time, if you're expecting DJ Reed back shortly after his IR stint, which he's eligible to return after Minnesota game, the first game after the bye week. If you're expecting maybe Terrion to be back somewhere within 4 games, considering you didn't put him on IR yet, I don't know why you would necessarily even need to add Fuller unless you expected him to play kind of in these first few weeks without those guys. So I don't know.
It's curious how how they reorganize their roster, adding Whiteside, adding Hallett. Now I know you had to do that from a bodies standpoint last game, but when you needed to make a cut this week, it was Strickland at a position you potentially down at, and it wasn't a guy like Whiteside who you thought might be a little bit more vulnerable. We have to see the week kind of play out, how the injury report looks, and I think we'll have a clear picture then. But for right now, everything is open.
Right. And I think we talked about this in between segments, but it's worth throwing the theory out there, because they get rid of Strickland, a safety where you might need it. Some people are kind of reading between the tea leaves and saying, okay, well, maybe this means Rock Ya-Sin is going to move back to safety where he was playing really well in training camp. Maybe he's your guy next to, gosh, I'm already forgetting his name.
Kirby or Thomas Harper.
Thomas Harper. Thomas Harper is what I was thinking. But yeah, maybe Kirby as well. And then now you have Fuller opposite Amik, and that looks a little bit better. That looks a little bit cleaner. And then I don't know what you do with nickel. I still don't know what you do with nickel like that.
Yeah, what's interesting is Hallett is this position flexible guy that can play all 5 spots, yet they haven't used him at all, which is a bit surprising because I thought he had a decent camp.
Yeah.
I thought he might have had a chance to start at nickel and didn't. His originally he entered the league as a safety.
Right.
And so I don't know. I don't know if they'd use him over Harper, though. I thought Harper stepped in and did pretty well in the 12 snaps that he had. So, yeah, it's there's a lot of moving pieces that could go a lot of different ways. So it's just not 100% clear. So yeah, everything is open right now.
We'll have to wait and to hear from some coaches, maybe hear from some players throughout the week. So make sure you're staying tuned to prideofdetroit.com for all the latest news and analysis for Detroit Lions news. You can always find all of our content, all of our video content, either on our YouTube page or Twitch pages, or if you want to just listen, go to your favorite podcasting platform. Leave us a review, preferably a nice one. Apparently, you can leave reviews on individual Spotify episodes now, and that's been a fun new comment section to see people yelling at us. Be a positive voice out there to interact some of the negativity, right? Be a good person. Either way, we do appreciate your feedback, positive and negative. And that'll do it for this week's show. So for Erik Schlitt, who's right over there, for myself, thank you all for listening. It's chaos. Be kind.
Recording stopped.
Long first segment, a little shorter second segment. Is that the way I
that was
that one?
Kind of, but they were both kind of long, honestly.
Ooh.
I think that one still went about 30.
Perfect.
All right. We'll answer some more questions here. And then, I don't know, what do you feel? Are you feeling anything in particular among the things I threw out there, things you want to do a review on? Look at the film of?
I don't know. It was so weird, like these primetime games. I start preparing for the next team, like even before, like I was doing research on Tampa on Sunday afternoon.
What are you,
like I was
a scout team?
I don't know, like, but I was like, I have extra time, like while I'm just sitting here watching, Red Zone. And I'm like,
that's all I want to do.
I
just want to sit there and watch Red Zone and do nothing.
Yeah. I get itchy. So I started doing my Tampa stuff. Because remember, I have to write an article on Tampa right after the game.
That's true.
Right.
It's an odds thing, and so you don't have to go into the crazy details that you sometimes do, but there are people that definitely appreciate it.
Well, I try to get my bearings on a team on the next opponent before I have to write. I don't want to be thinking about the Chiefs game and then have to try and throw together a Tampa Bay odds piece. You know what I mean?
Sure.
All at the same time.
Yeah.
So.
I got you.
Yeah.
I'm not judging you. It's a strength, not a weakness. It's just.
It's weird.
You're a freak.
Then I have to completely refocus myself. It's weird though. I'm gonna enjoy the bye though. Holy cow,
man! Why does it feel like we're 3 months into the season when it's literally been one? Yet it also feels like it's moving too fast.
Yeah.
You always gonna miss it when it's gone.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's certainly feels both fast and slow this time of year, right?
Yes. Yep. Which probably just means it's moving at a normal time.
Hard to
find. It's just about like what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Right. Like from a work standpoint, it just seems like it's like flying by.
Yeah.
Or from like it's just we've been doing it
right.
over and over and over, and it's just like, but in reality, it's like it probably hasn't been that long. It just feels like it because we're working towards that break where we get to change our routine, and then as a fan, you're like, oh man, I wish there was like 100 more weeks of this.
Right. You're like week 7 of 18. What? No.
Right.
We just got started. We're just getting to know this team. You're telling me we're halfway over?
Right.
It's crazy. Jeff, hit me. What you got? I have NFL Plus loaded up, but I still do you want to do Dan Skipper? I feel like
I didn't watch much of Dan Skipper.
Okay.
And he didn't stand out to me that much, which I thought I took as a good thing.
That's probably a good thing.
And then I looked at the NFL Pro Insights, and they were like, Dan Skipper gave up 6 pressures, more than any other Lions offensive
All
lineman in
right.
any game this season. And I was like, oh man. And I was like, why was I just missing that then?
Then okay,
So
we'll do some Dan Skipper film review, and
it's
then
very interesting, that's for sure. Because I
then
didn't
I'm
think
not sure.
it did, like I said, he didn't stand out in a bad
Right.
way at all.
Jeff asks, "What do you make of Dan's response to your question? Did it come from a place of just being frustrated with losing that game that they probably felt was winnable going in?" No, I think he was frustrated with whatever happened. I think whatever happened between him and the officials, he's frustrated with, and he doesn't want to say. He doesn't want to reveal what
You
he's
don't want to
frustrated
get fined. You don't want to get fined. He doesn't want to come out and be like these liars.
Well, but no, I mean, like, I wonder if he had, and like, let's say, if you don't know, I asked him, and I'm going to try to ask this as verbatim as I asked it then. I said, in the past, you've said that you run your trick plays by the officials beforehand just so that they're prepared to call it. Did you do that with this trick play? And did they give you any assurances that, yes, the way you run it is legal? And he basically said, I don't want to answer that. It's a sore subject. I don't want to answer it, but I'm going to take full responsibility that we got the play wrong, that it was that I, the players did what they were supposed to do. They did how we taught it. So that means it's on me. I think that's a part of frustration. Like, I don't know if that means that, yes, he did run it by the officials, and yes, the officials said it was okay, or the other controversy that we talked about at the top of the show, which is the only reason that play was called wrong was because they got help from New York. Because maybe the officials did tell him on the field, say, yep, we saw that play. That your kind of theory, Eric, which is they ran it by, what's the official's name again?
Craig Rolstad.
Greg Rolstad. Greg Rolstad said, yep, cool. It's perfect. That's fine. The play happens. Greg Rolstad, great, cool, that's fine. Let's move on. And then New York says, hey, no, Greg, you're wrong. This is an illegal shift. And if that's the case, if either one of those are the case, Dan has full right to be as upset as he clearly is.
Right, because he was told it was okay, and then New York intervenes illegally.
Yeah. Which is just frustrating. I mean, this is the second time something like that has happened where it wasn't just that they got the call wrong, and in this case they actually got the call right eventually. It's that the operation was faulty on the officials' part. It's that when it was in Dallas, it was, you missed our correct signal. We ran the play right. You misinterpreted our signals. In this instance, it was either New York went beyond their scope of what they were supposed to do, or the officials on the field gave the Lions faulty information about that play beforehand. Or maybe both. And if that's the case, then we are talking about an issue that, in my opinion, is far worse than any, hey, that should have been a pass interference. Hey, you missed this hold. Hey, this guy was technically offsides. Those are things that, again, you're just going to have those mistakes. No human being is perfect at observations. But if you're getting the operational part of your job wrong, that is something that shouldn't happen. Absolutely shouldn't happen.
Side note.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at the NFL Pro key matchups, like those little head-to-head things where they talk about efficiency. It's pretty interesting. Like, you go to passing, and the Bucks have all the advantages when they're passing, and when you look at, and then the Lions, when they're passing, have all the advantages when they're passing. It's like usually there's some intermixing, but there's a very stark contrast. It's just all Bucks passing, all Lions passing. But when you go to key advantages and you look at like where the top areas that the Lions could find success,
Yeah.
passing with play action, which we know,
Yep.
like intermediate passing again, which we know because intermediate passing unlocks everything that they want to do.
Sure.
They're number one in both of those things in efficiency. The number one team in being efficient with play action and intermediate passing. Shouldn't surprise you at all.
Nope.
The third one for the Lions, where they're also number one in the league, rushing versus stacked box.
Interesting. So their efficiency
Yeah.
overall numbers are down.
Yet they're the
But
best
this-
team at rushing against the stacked box in the league.
Interesting. And that's
The
by
Bucks,
EPA?
by the way, I'm not sure what they use to. They don't really explain.
Oh.
They just talk. This is just supposed to be their
Yeah.
efficiency. I don't know what they use to determine efficiency.
Interesting.
Let me put it that way. Yeah, it's just like that's why I don't cite this when I'm doing my write-ups
Yeah.
because they don't explain their reasoning. But I do find it interesting that I know it's based on efficiency. I just don't know the reasoning behind each of their subjects. But yeah, they say as far as efficiency, like when the Buccaneers stack the box, they're the 28th in efficiency, and when the Lions rush against the stack box, they're number one. So they give that a massive advantage to the Lions. So I guess it won't matter if they stack the box against if Tampa Bay stacks the box. I don't know. It's fascinating.
It
Some
is
of the stuff that they have is so interesting to like dive down again. It's not something that I'm going to go out there and be like, oh, look at this. This is a huge key, because I don't know where they get their info from. But
Yeah.
they like it.
Nonetheless.
Yeah.
All right. So here's what I think we're going to do, chat. Because we're going to do this film breakdown and because we don't want to get the midweek mailbag copyright claimed, we're going to end this stream. And then in like a minute or two, we're going to start a new stream that we don't care if we get, we don't care if it's demonetized because of copyright issues, where we're just going to break down film. And it sounds like we'll do some Dan Skipper stuff, maybe do some Amik stuff, maybe do some Screen Pass stuff. Take about 30 to 40 minutes to just break down some of the film from the Chiefs game. So if you're on Twitch, you don't have to go anywhere. If you're on YouTube, this stream is going to end, so you might want to just head back to youtube.com/Pride of Detroit and wait for the new stream to start. If you have alerts already set up, you'll get an alert when we go live. So we'll close out this podcast, this stream right now. Stick around for about a minute or two, and then we'll